Hi, I'm Shane. I'm with the Hood County Substance Abuse Council, and today I have Kate with me, and she's going to share her story. And we don't really have a time frame on this, so we're just going to see how it goes. Let Kate share her story, and then I'm sure I'll ask some questions as well. All right. Well,
Okay.
Kate, thanks for joining us.
Of course.
And I'm excited to hear about your story, and I'm not going to lead it out with anything. Just let you kind of start out
Okay.
and share how you want to share, and then I'll maybe ask questions as they come along. So,
All right. Sounds good. So, I guess always start at the beginning of your stories. I come from, obviously I grew up in Toller. I graduated in 2016 from Toller High School, but my story actually begins a little bit earlier than that. I was fairly quiet in junior high and didn't, really be into that scene or anything like that. But whenever I got probably into my freshman year, I got a little bit of a wild streak in my hair and decided that I wanted to go, hang out with kids that were not my age and to start doing things. As soon as I started working when I was 16, it got a little bit worse. But when I was 15, I first started to smoke weed and I started to drink at parties. And I guess for a 15-year-old, that is almost normalized at that age. Now, in this day and age, it kind of is, but I never really pictured it going any further than that. I used to, hear, it wasn't really in this area, but I used to hear about people that would get into like serious drugs, and I was like, oh, that'll never be me, because that's what nobody ever thinks.
sure.
But it very much can turn into that. I come from a really supportive, loving family. I don't have any serious trauma from them that I deal with as far as like my reasoning for turning the way that I did. So it truly doesn't have to be anything from your background story. It can really be decisions that you make. So whenever I was 15, I started to smoke and I started to drink, and then I started to dabble with cocaine at parties. That was every once in a while. I was still kind of scared of it because I didn't really know. But as I turned in, so 15 was when I really started using, marijuana, drinking, and a little bit of cocaine pretty regularly. Then I got into being 16 and 17. I graduated when I was 17, so this was like my junior and senior year. I really, really kind of like got the ball rolling. I started to go to raves almost every weekend with a group of friends. We would go
So
to
we don't have those in
Dallas.
Toller, do we? I'm curious. Or where
They
were they at? Not
they
physically, but
they are
Fort
in
Worth or where?
they are in Toller as
Oh,
well.
okay.
Yeah, they were
See,
my
us
friends.
us older people need to understand a little bit, honestly,
Right,
about what's. I think a lot of us are honestly naive about,
right,
not
right. It's
intentionally,
very
but we don't. Obviously, you could tell me if I'm wrong, but probably at 17, 16, 17, I'm guessing you're not telling your parents, "Hey, I'm going to a rave,"
absolutely not.
right? So,
Absolutely not.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Location services were turned off and we were hanging out, in Pecan Plantation as far as everyone else is concerned.
okay, sure,
But we were
yeah,
definitely going to Dallas and staying out, and coming back at 7 o'clock in the morning
sure, wow,
driving. Yeah.
okay,
But they were my friends in Toller. I had friends from Granbury. And then that led me into like their friends from Fort Worth that were, in their 20s, and that's where we
sure.
would get everything from. But I started going to raves. I started experimenting with Molly.
So you were talking about going to raves and all of that, and
Mhm.
if I could just ask real quick,
Ask me.
because I'm curious.
Mhm.
I mean, so you obviously had a source of drugs or whatever.
Right.
Did you have to pay for those? Did they give it to you free? I mean, how does that work
So I wish
in
I
your
could say that
case?
it was free, but we absolutely had to pay.
Okay,
Yeah, we definitely paid for them. They came from Fort Worth. They came from Dallas as far as like the Molly and the ecstasy and everything like that went. But if I was getting anything like cocaine or marijuana, that was in Toller. It was in Granbury. It was
hmm.
even in Stephenville where we would go and get cocaine a lot of the times.
So if you don't mind, since we're talking about that, then I'm gonna let you continue to talk
Hmm.
about your story. How did you come up with the money to be able to do that? And
I worked. I started working at Babes when I was 16,
okay,
and I somehow managed. to keep up with that. And amongst
Right.
all of this, I considered myself, just a normal functioning teenager that liked to party.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and I guess it was like that for a while, but then it took a really big change when I got out of high school. But anyways, so we started doing all that, and then just partying, drinking, doing the most all the time. And then my senior year, I think it was October of my senior year, we started senior year, and I've already alienated everyone that from my school that was like my good friends, my friends that I'd had for a long time, and I just hung out with, the people that I thought were just like me and that I wanted to be around.
Alienated them in what way? Just did it change you? You mean
It changed me. I
you?
wasn't somebody that the right type of people would want to be around.
Okay.
And looking back, that's understandable. I was not very nice. I was, grouchy because I was either, out the night before or I was ready to go out the next night.
Tired or ready for more drugs or something?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure. But I was October of my senior year, and the drug dog paid a visit to the Toller High School, like they always do.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, I'm always late to school, or I was always late to school. They gave me a heads up on the way because I was late, and they said the drug dog's here, and I'm like, psh, whatever, like I'll just throw
Yeah.
my stuff out.
Right.
And I thought that I did. Everything that I remembered was in
Oh,
my car.
wow. Yeah.
So I go to school and I park my car. I know it probably smells like marijuana, but they can't charge you on a smell. And I
Right.
couldn't get that
Sure.
out on the way to
Yeah.
school. So obviously I knew they would hit on my car, and they're like, they put on the intercom, Kate Gilbreth, come to the office. And I'm like, okay. So I go down there, and the officer's in there, and he asked for my keys because they said the dog had hit on my car. I was like, whatever. I had a really bad attitude then. And I, just kind of threw my keys on the counter, and I was like, I'll be in, whatever class when you're done with my keys.
Yeah.
And so I went back to class, and then they called me back out again, and I thought I was going to get my keys. It would be fine. And they told me to go into, it was our counselor's office, and they told me to sit down.
Right.
And I was like, okay, they're just going to give me like a talking to. It'll be fine. Like they just know it smells like pot. And the officer, I can't remember his name, but I really would like to, talk to him one day and let him see the other side of it.
Sure. Yeah.
But he comes in that office, and I was playing dumb is what I was doing. And
Right.
he pulls out a baggie of cocaine. And I was 17 years old, and he was like, do you want to explain to me what this is? And I was like, it's not mine.
Right.
It's not mine, but it was in my car.
Right.
It's like, well, it was under your driver's seat, wedged in between the back floor mat and the wall. I was like, yeah, I didn't know that was in there. Obviously, I would have gotten it out because I pulled over and got everything out.
Right.
And so I just, started crying and trying to play the victim, dumb. I'm dumb college girl, or not college girl, high school girl. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I guess apparently in some way it worked. Being manipulative goes along with addiction, saying whatever you have to say.
Sure. I'm sure you get kind of good at it, honestly. Yeah.
And so I said what I had to say, that I was sorry and that it really wasn't mine, and that I've been hanging out with the wrong crowd and all those things. And so they made a deal with the high school right then and there, Principal Morgan and my counselor, Miss Foster, the school counselor, that they were going to suspend me and kick me out of Toller High School. And let me do an off-campus suspension with Miss Rickabaugh, who was my teacher.
Yeah.
And just do that as opposed to charging me with a controlled substance at 17 years old.
Right.
Which is amazing.
Sure.
Looking back at it now, but even then I was mad.
Right.
I was mad. I was like, this is stupid, you know. Like, why is this happening to me? I didn't do anything.
Right.
And I was in that high school, and I had stuff in my purse all the time, and just looking back, it was so selfish, like doing all of these things and literally having it in the school, and like going to the bathroom like in between classes and making sure I was awake for algebra. Like, it's a hard topic to talk about, but it's real. Like, it was there.
Yeah.
A lot of people knew and didn't, I wouldn't let them tell me anything.
Sure.
And so they gave up.
Obviously no names, but were you the only one, or were there other kids, in your same shoes, basically?
There was a lot in every grade.
Yeah.
Every
grade. I'm going to interrupt briefly because I think it's a common thought that,
Right.
and not only in Toller, but a common thought that there's not quote unquote a drug problem, or that it's only marijuana and drinking, right? So maybe you can
I
briefly
wish.
share your
Um,
opinion, not even opinion, but your experience on that, because I think not only the younger people, but us
mhm.
parents and older people need to, I think, come to terms with the fact that I don't believe that either. I think we do have a problem, but coming from you, it might,
Right.
mean more.
So it starts out that way. I mean, I've rarely met any individual who has just gone straight to the top like I did and ended up, doing the things that I did, which we'll get into.
Yeah,
But it starts out as marijuana and it starts off as alcohol. It always does. If you're normal in a sense, you party in high school. I mean, you drink, you do your thing or don't. And then you kind of grow up and go on with your life and don't take it any further. But like, what if your kid does? I mean, it does it.
yeah,
There is very much a problem, and it's not going to be. It's not going to be in Toller because we don't want it to. We can't ignore it. It was there. I was there. I brought a lot of it into Toller, and I carry a lot of that guilt. But at the same time, I mean, it's going to be there, and knowing the signs is going to be the only way that you know how to make a proactive change with it.
sure.
So,
Just curious. I mean, was it the kind of thing where maybe marijuana drinking during the week, and then I guess the crazier stuff, if you want to say that, during the weekend? I mean, or were you consuming the you know, I guess
the
the
harder
coke and the
stuff,
other
yeah.
things during the week as well?
Um, I was I would smoke every day. I would smoke marijuana every single day, in between classes. We would go out to the parking lot. I'm sure they've gotten stricter on that now, but like during break and stuff, like 10-minute break, we could go out to our cars
Right.
and it wasn't a big deal because this was, back in 2013,
Sure.
2014, 2015. And it really wasn't progressing. Like I remember a time whenever there really wasn't a super big drug problem because we were so small. I
Right.
graduated with 50 people and
Sure.
now it's Toller so much bigger, I
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and
but
of course, you probably know now, and maybe not as much now because it's become such a big topic. But
hmm
now with probably since you've kind of come through, with vaping, you can put the dabs in the vapes and
hmm
get 70+% THC in it, and a lot of that's
yeah,
really hard to detect. So I don't
it
know if
is.
vapes were a big deal when you were coming
They
through, but I
they
know it's
were.
really is now.
We one of I'm not gonna, obviously name names, but one of my friends actually got caught with a vape THC oil pen in
Hmm.
Toller High School. They are a thing. They're very hard to detect. The way he got caught is basically because he was acting,
Yeah.
acting like
Abnormal. Yeah. Or
abnormal, and
yeah.
they were like,
You're
hello.
right.
But they're very hard to detect. It's very hard to know. I mean, to you just have to know the signs. That's the
Sure.
biggest thing.
Well, I think you hit on a good point. I think for one, if you're not looking, if you're not looking for it, in other words, as a an adult, looking over
Right.
your students, and if you, to your point, don't know the signs and things,
Mhm.
you're not going to see it, because I could be wrong, but I think it's human nature to want to believe that kind of thing's not going on because we don't want it to.
Yeah,
But
but
we need to fight that urge, if you will, because the reality is, to your point, it is happening, and
yeah.
we'll get to it. I want to hear your story, but I'm also,
Mhm.
when you can get to it, I'd like to find out or hear from you what you think people can do, to help,
Right.
because obviously, um, in the midst of what you were going through, probably the last thing you wanted, I'm guessing, was for your parents or others to intervene. You probably
Yeah.
thought that you were enjoying what you were doing. Of course, on
Yes.
the other end of it, it's a different story,
Yeah,
obviously.
for
But
sure.
go ahead and continue to
Okay.
share.
So after, the cops got involved my senior year, I got kicked out of school and I actually finished my classes online doing Odyssey Wear down at the old elementary school, the old second and third grade buildings. I
Mm-hmm.
just went in by myself every day. Miss Rickabaugh was always sitting there waiting with me.
Right.
I was always late, and she would always be at the door. And I would try and bring her like pig in a blankets or something from the donut shop and be like,
Sure.
I'm sorry. But like she really made a very big impact.
Right. That's great.
And she'd be like, I'm not stupid. I know.
Right.
Like, you don't have to fool with me.
Right.
But so I did my classes online through Odyssey. I think I finished in November. It's really hard to remember, but November or December. And so I was done with, you know, high school.
Right.
And so I chilled and did whatever all the way from January until May.
Right.
And was done with class. And then I remember Principal Morgan reaching out to me saying, all right, if you want to come get fitted for your cap and gowns, you can come up to the school. You're allowed on the premises from this time to this time.
Right.
So I went up there and I walk in the high school library and everyone's like looking at me like, where have you been? And I'm like,
Yeah.
we were doing our practice, like the walkthrough for graduation,
Right.
and everybody was just like, you still go to school here? And I'm like,
Mm.
I sure kind of.
Yeah.
But I got fitted for that, and I just remember feeling so awkward going in there. And everybody tried to like be nice or whatever, but they all knew. I mean,
Sure.
Kate's doing what she's not supposed to be doing, and I still continued to do it even the day of my graduation. I showed up a little bit late and had to go run in line outside,
Right.
as they were fixing to walk in. But I graduated, and then the night of my graduation, everybody went to graduation parties and, tried to do like the right type of partying, like with their family and their friends. And
Mm-hmm.
me and all my friends from, a couple of them from Toller, but mainly from Granbury, that were graduating a couple days later, all got in the car and loaded up and went to a club in Dallas
Yeah.
the night of my graduation.
Wow.
Yeah. And so did a bunch of crazy stuff that night. And then that summer, I was supposed to go to Blinn College in College Station. I'd signed up. I even, on top of my graduation cap, had the BC for Blinn College,
Right.
blue and white decorated on the top. And I just remember my mom trying to do everything that she could. She knew, but she didn't know how bad it was,
Right.
And at this point, I'd only been doing, the cocaine, the ecstasy, the Molly, and stuff like
Right.
that. And so we started having the conversation about, okay, do you want to go down there and look at these places, like these apartments and stuff? Like, I will help you. We'll get you in somewhere, and then we'll get you started with college.
Right.
And then I'm trying to keep this like somewhat vague and not
I
name
understand.
names.
Yeah, sure.
I met a group of people that were from the Granbury area pretty early on into, it was probably like June, after I'd graduated, June and
Right.
July, that started doing this new drug. And everybody in Granbury knows about them because of a couple of years ago, but they were called caps.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first started partying with them, we were just doing the drinking, the smoking, all of that
Sure.
stuff. Xanax bars and all those things, but they told me that it was powdered lean, which is non-existent. That's not a thing.
Okay.
Codeine is lean, and like the
Oh,
cough syrup
right.
and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I didn't know any better. I wasn't super educated on anything prescription-wise.
Right.
And so they said,
So in other words, it was supposedly some kind of oxy-related thing.
yeah, it was supposed to be some sort of downer, like chill you out and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I was, I'd always really been into uppers like cocaine and Molly and ecstasy, and I like to party and stuff like
Sure.
that. So it wasn't really my thing,
Right.
but I tried it, and it actually, later on finding out, turned out to be synthetic fentanyl.
Ooh. Yeah. Not good.
Not good. And so I just remember, like, it's this crazy like point in my life where I remember going from just like doing it to party and like doing it to hang out, and then like June, July, August, and then like in August I was supposed to start going down to College Station and figuring out like the apartments and stuff. And so for those 3 months I didn't go home. I stayed at my friend's house. I stayed with him, and like we basically just hunkered down in there. We were selling weed, we were selling the caps, we were just doing whatever by any means necessary. I was
Are the
working.
caps? I'm just curious because I've not heard of that, and I'm trying to know as much as I can. But I
Right.
mean, is that still a thing as far as you know? And what do you think brought it on? I mean, was it just a cheaper way to give people a certain feel? In other words,
Right.
I don't have a good sense of why these new drugs. Well, one thing I know is there seems to be a constant attempt to try to keep things "quote unquote" legal. In a sense where you can
Yeah.
make something new. But
That's what it was. I think they identified it as 470, 700 powder or something like that. And at the time, it wasn't illegal.
Right.
They were getting it shipped in. But as far as I know, and y'all will understand later on in the story why I switched to what I did, they just went away at some point. It was a
Okay.
dealer bringing it in off the black market, capping it up and selling it.
Sure.
And I got addicted to that specific type of opiate.
So it
that
was a
downer.
certain kind of concoction, if you will, that maybe a select group of people were making. So I guess maybe they
Right.
got,
It's compared to
maybe
an
they got
elephant
put in jail or
tranquilizer.
something, and then nobody was making it anymore.
Yeah,
But anyway.
and so they got put in jail, and it kind of just went whoop one
Yeah.
day. I mean, I remember they used to be $5 a piece, and then it went to 7. Sometimes you can get them for 6, and at the end, they were selling them for $20 a piece.
Wow.
And I was doing 10 or 15 of them a day.
Wow.
I started out not even being able to handle half of one little one without like throwing up and getting
Yeah.
sick and like passing out. You build your tolerance super quick with opiates, any type of downer like that. But
I mean, were you mixing it when maybe you'll get to it, but were you
Mhm.
mixing some kind of a, oxy variant and benzos as well or something like that at some point?
Oh yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
was doing
Because I know that's the really
benzos. That's the
dangerous. I mean,
dangerous
not
stuff.
that it's all not dangerous, but
Right.
I heard a really interesting statistic actually this week that
Overdoses.
80% of overdoses that lead to death, 80% of them is a mix of
Yeah.
something. It's not just a single substance.
Yeah.
20% is still too many, and so
Right.
that's 20% that's the one thing. But I know a lot of it's a mixture of alcohol and all these other things. So
Yeah, so anything like to do with Xanax and opiates, benzos and opiates, oxys and stuff like that, it's a deadly combination, and I was very much doing both.
Yeah.
All the
Wow.
time.
Yeah.
But
Did you know that it was that you were playing with, fire, if you will, in a
I
sense?
didn't
Okay.
I didn't think twice about it, but that was just me
Of
being
course, no one's
naive.
going to tell you, right, amongst the people that are doing it, if they even knew.
Yeah,
Because,
and none of us, I don't blame it on any specific person because we were all new to it.
yeah,
You know, a certain person brought it in, but we thought it was just like another party thing. And
sure.
like we could go without it if we wanted
Yeah.
to. So I just remember a weekend where we did it steady. Like we got a big amount of it and we're just doing it steady throughout the day, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I had to work on Monday. I was waitressing. And I tried to go to work without it. That was my first time to ever experience withdrawal.
Wow.
And I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And so I I just remember like thinking like, oh, I feel sick. I have to go home. Like I don't know what's wrong with me. I caught the flu or something. And then I get home or over to where I was staying,
Right.
and there was some caps there, and I did a line of it, and I felt so much better. And I was like, oh, this is not okay. Because
So
like
this is
you
a
get that.
powder that you're sniffing? Okay.
It was a powder that I was sniffing for a
Okay.
while, and so kept on going with that, and then so I caught a charge. I got pulled over. Okay, so I didn't go to college. I basically was like, I'm going to take a year off. Like, I don't want to go.
Right.
You know, I'm in a relationship. I don't want to leave, blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
And so I was just stuck in this stagnant water of what I thought was making me happy, which was drugs and, you know, toxicity. And so I stayed, bouncing to my mom's house, like dealing with her turning my phone off, all of these things. Um, Working basically to support my habit and to get gas and, you know, maybe a Sonic burrito every now and
Sure.
then.
So you're still living around here somewhere at that point? Okay. Okay.
And so, forgive me, the story gets a little bit fuzzy
No, that's
whenever I
fine.
first think back about it.
Sure.
But I know that I caught, which is like a big thing to not remember the exact date, but I got pulled over at some point, either when I was 18 still. And I got pulled over and I had some of those caps on me. And an officer asked to search my car because I was swerving. I was going everywhere, and I had two other people in the car with me, and we were going to pick someone up.
Right.
And they found them. And they were like, you want to tell me what this is? And like, you know, the police department already had an idea of like what these were because a couple of people have been caught with them. I've lost 2 really good friends to them.
Right.
And we'll get into that too.
Wow.
But they knew what they were. And even they said it by name too, and I thought that was just a thing that we called them. And I was like, oh, this is like kind of a big deal. And
Sure.
so 18, I caught my first, I didn't think that, I always thought it would never be me. You would never catch me. I'm a good girl. Like, look at me. I go to
Sure.
Toller. Like, you're not gonna
Right.
arrest me. I got out of it once in Toller. Why would you arrest me?
Right.
And they sure did. They arrested me, and I got charged with a controlled substance under a gram. They couldn't identify what it was yet, though. They identified it as a controlled substance. I
Right.
think on mobile patrol it said it was methamphetamines, which was
Mm.
not correct.
Yeah.
But they didn't know what it was. So I go in and I call my mom, and of course she gets me out. You know, she was in Vegas actually, but she got me out. And so I get out and I go back to doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm awaiting trial at this point, right? So in Hood County, when you're awaiting trial, you have to take bond UAs when you're out on bond. Urinary analysis, every first and third Monday of the month to make sure that you are still here, that you are paying, your bond, and that you are staying sober
Yeah.
and doing good until your court date.
Right.
It's not a thing that everywhere does, but Hood County does it,
Right.
which is good, which was for me was bad at the
Sure.
time.
Yeah. Because you weren't doing it, right?
I was not. But the thing about those caps, the synthetic fentanyl, they do not show up on drug tests.
Okay.
They don't. The stuff that I switched to later on did, but they do not show up on drug tests. It doesn't show up as an opiate. It doesn't show up as anything. It shows up, it's under the radar because it's not actually any.
It's not something they're testing for.
It's not something they're testing for yet.
Right.
Just like how they had to come out with like K2 tests and stuff
Sure.
because it's not a normal thing.
It's just like CBD and marijuana. I mean,
Exactly.
there's not really a CBD test.
There's
quote unquote,
not.
that
You
they
can look
use.
at the metabolites, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's by the time you do that, you're spending hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
But so I got charged with that, and I got out, and I was, basically going in on the first and third Monday, and I just stopped smoking. I stopped, doing cocaine because I figured out like that was my necessity. I was addicted to those, and I was like, well, if I can't do anything else, at least I can do like what I'm addicted to.
Yeah.
So I switched to like I stopped smoking, I stopped doing everything, and I was just doing those steady every single day, and I built up a tolerance really, really quick. And so I had to deal with that. I failed one bond UA, and automatically in Hood County, when you fail a bond UA, you get arrested. And you go in, and all that basically happens is they double your bond, and it's a money system.
Sure.
But they double your bond, and then you can get back out again and go back to taking bond UAs. It's kind of a messed up system, but you know, whatever. If you're gonna mess up, you're gonna pay the price, literally.
Sure. Yeah.
So I messed up. I failed for cocaine, which I was like, oh, how? But they cut that stuff all the time. You never know.
Sure, you don't know what else is in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I failed for cocaine, and I got back out, and then I kept on doing that. And then it got really really bad. And I had to go. My mom figured out like I looked like crap. I looked terrible.
Sure.
I was like a black and white picture of myself. I had no color to my skin. My eyes were gray. My hair was all bleached and fried and just looked terrible because I just kept on messing with it, trying to make myself look better. My skin looked terrible. I wouldn't go anywhere without trying to slap on makeup first, like because I didn't want anybody to see. And I was 90 pounds.
Wow.
And I'm 5'9". I'm 5'8".